I'm going to be talking to you today on breaking negative relationship cycles. It happened yesterday. It happened last year, last month, about a quarter ago, and it's happening again. If you understand what I'm talking about, you should know that I'm talking to you or talking with you. We've all been there. I mean, we all go through it on a regular basis in relationship. I'm talking about cycles and patterns. Let me always say this: you never change a problem if you don't alter the pattern. Write that down. You can never change the problem until first you understand the patterns. Once you're able to understand the pattern, then you can be able to deal with the problem. It's important. Let me write that down again. Okay, so it's about patterns and problems. Okay, and never forget this, that until you deal with the pattern, you will never be able to change the problem. Let's go to what I call the theology of relationship. Amos chapter 3 verse 3. Amos chapter 3 in verse 3. It states in the Bible that can two walk together except they be agreed? Can two walk together except they be agreed? The reverse application of that is that until we are agreed, we cannot walk together. So let's take it from there today, that until we agree on few things: knowing who you are, knowing who I am, accepting who you are, accepting who I am, and then creating room for each of us to find expression in the relationship such that my weaknesses is complemented by your strength and my strength also complements your weaknesses and all of that. Until we come into that place of agreement, our relationships will always suffer great pain. All right? So let's take it a little bit further. Let me ask you some questions, and I want you to honestly think about these questions. Number one, let me ask you these questions. What always makes your relationship to have repeated crises? Big question number one. What is it that always makes your relationship to have repeated crises? Take note of that question. Can you think about that? Number two question. What always leads to that repeated crisis? How would you feel if your son keeps repeating the same thing over and over again? You teach, you expose your son to a different environment, different culture. You expose your son to different teachers, and your son will still remain adamant, giving back the same answers that caused him to fail before. Number two, how do you always behave or react when there is a crisis? Very important. How do you always behave when there is a crisis? It's important that you are able to come to terms with how you behave. You see, whenever you get into a situation whereby you have continuous behavior without attempted inventories, you're going to keep repeating that behavior. How do you always react, behave whenever there is a crisis? How does your partner behave or react to your behavior? Now, listen, how do you behave when there's a crisis? Number three, how does your partner behave or react to your behavior and your reaction? In physics, there is something we call, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So my question is, whenever there's a crisis, how does your partner behave to your behavior? Then the next question will be, how does your partner's behavior or reaction make you feel or see yourself? Now, don't forget, you behave in a particular way. That triggered behavior, a behavior from your partner. How does your partner's behavior make you feel, think, or see yourself? This is leading us to something. I'm trying to show you how patterns and cycles are established in relationship. The next question I want to ask you is, do you confront your partner when you notice that behavior from your partner? Do you confront, or do you withdraw? Or do you get into a situation where you resolve or repeat the same situation? Now, what normally creates a cycle is normally not too far from the points that I've mentioned. If you don't confront it, you will withdraw from it. If you don't withdraw from it, you will resolve it. And if you don't resolve it, you will repeat it. And here's the point. The reason why cycles are repeated is that people who have gotten used to either withdrawing, confronting, or people who have gotten used, who are not used to confronting, who are not used to withdrawing, people who are not used to, resolving, always end up repeating. What exactly is negative relationship cycle? What do we mean when we talk about, what does that mean when we talk about negative relationship cycle? What does that mean? I'd like you to follow me with this few definition. Negative relationship cycle is a toxic or vicious or repeated pattern of behavior or interaction that destroys emotional bonds between two individuals in a relationship or marriage. Negative relationship cycle can also be considered as patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving where both partners get stuck in fighting with each other or one another. It's a negative way of thinking, a negative way of acting, behaving, deciding that often causes two individuals in a relationship to always get at loggerheads with each other. It's what we call a negative cycles of relationships. We have what they call the stages involved. The stages involved in creating what we call a negative relationship cycle. The stages involved. Number one, there is what we call triggers. Triggers. Now, triggers are basically the things that activate, stimulate, and causes a negative cycle in the first place to begin. Number two stage is what we call reaction. When there is a trigger, the next thing is there will be a reaction. What reaction causes is it causes the expression of negative behaviors. Follow carefully. It causes the expression of negative behaviors. And it is these negative behaviors that will either lead to a repeat, it will lead to defense, or it will lead to regret. When these behaviors are expressed, somebody will regret. And when the person regrets, look, I'm sorry for what I've done. All right. The relationship, that cycle can be broken with regret. I'm sorry for what I've done, and I will not do that again. Apologies. All right. So regret can lead to apology. Regret can lead to repentance. In the absence of regret, there will be defense. And defense is normally what causes relationships not to be healed when there is a crisis. Number one negative relationship cycle that I want to introduce you to today is what I call the cycle of domination and intimidation. The negative cycle of domination and intimidation. This is one of the major and one of the most deadliest negative relationship cycles, domination and intimidation. What that does in a relationship is that repeatedly you have a situation whereby whenever we are having a conversation, interaction as a husband and a wife or singles in relationship, there is this person who shuts down the other person, who doesn't allow this other person to express himself or herself. You are in that kind of relationship where somebody just suppresses you, oppresses you, does not allow you to express your heart. It's a relationship where just keep your emotions to yourself, don't express how you feel. We create a pseudo peaceful relationship environment, a relationship environment that looks like there is no quarrel. Why? We don't talk. Now, the problem with that is that it doesn't mean we are at peace. A relationship where there's constant conversation, constant confrontation, and ultimately constant resolution is better in every way than a relationship where there is quietness, peace, pseudo peace, no conversation, and there is a presumed atmosphere of intimacy. The reality is that kind of a relationship is dangerous. Number two, it's a negative cycle of emotional disengagement. What does that mean? There is this constant cycle. It starts, for a while, two of us will not be emotionally connected. They call it the negative cycle of emotional disengagement. For a while, two of us are not emotionally connected. We are emotionally disengaged, okay? If you are married, you are emotionally divorced. You sleep in the same house, but emotionally you are not connected. Is that all right? Why? Somebody is defensive. So there is no emotional penetration. Did you hear what I just said right now? Yes, you can be having sex where there is physical penetration, but you are not having intimacy because there is no emotional penetration. How do we deal with emotional disengagement? In the first place, what caused us to drift apart? What led to your drift? What made the two of you to be emotionally disengaged? Is it observation? Is it growth? What happened? Is it new opportunities? Is it new demands? Is it children? What caused the drift? Until you identify the trigger and respond instead of react, you may not be able to resolve the problem. Number 3 is a negative cycle of emotional abuse. This is one of the most deadliest of all negative cycles in relationship. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, where you speak with words that are critical and contemptuous to destroy the emotions of your partner, where you use statements that are poisonous, such that after you've dropped the words, the poisons are spreading around your partner. We've all been victims of it. I've had moments in my life when my wife will come in like, you said this, and I'm like, good God Almighty, I didn't mean that, but that was how she heard it. And that was how she heard it. In the moments when we are upset, we make statements to express our feelings. But the interpretation of what we said in the moments when we are hurt, only the person who is on the receiving end lives with the reality of it. Number 4 is a negative cycle of stubbornness and inflexibility. I've seen this play out severally in marriages and relationships, where one partner is just absolutely stubborn. You can't be corrected. You are alpha, you are in between, you are omega. You are beginning, you are the middle, you are the end. Your authority cannot be challenged. You cannot be questioned. And whatever you believe, you hold on to it. Even if you are sinking with it like the Titanic. You are rigid, you are inflexible. Your wife or husband cannot tell you something that you are. No, this is my way. It's my way. It's either your way or no other way. Let's continue this with the negative cycle of verbal abuse. Negative cycle of verbal abuse. Oh my goodness. Listen. This cycle, let me give you an instance. I grew up in a part of my country, Nigeria, where when you wake up in the morning to greet your elders, they don't greet you like good morning. They greet you with an insult. They can insult your father, insult your mom, and it's a way of greeting. So you grew up in an environment where verbal abuse was a normal thing. There are some parts of Nigeria whereby verbal abuse, it's just all over in the atmosphere. So children from such a place, when they grow up and become adults, when they are talking with their wives, they are talking with their husbands, they use such abusive language. For them, it is okay. But for the partner, it is damaging. Here's my concern for you. If you don't break this cycle, it will be worse in the lives of your children. Break the cycle. Your children grew up seeing you dominate your husband, dominate your wife. They grew up, they saw it. And they are visually affected by that. Please, can I talk to parents? And can I talk to those who grew up from those environments? It wasn't okay. You didn't grow up in a good place. And don't think it didn't matter. It mattered. You will always repeat what you saw. I'm calling you to a state of consciousness before the effects begin. Recognize that you grew up in a wrong environment, and it's time to start doing something about it.